It's lit. There you go.
Cool.
Now we need
Okay.
we need your computer up.
Okay, let me do my Dan pose, point my. I'm taller than he is.
Fantastic.
And you've got me from my front camera, not from the back, correct?
Yeah, you're just exactly right. And at the break, you can hit that little button and it will pause you.
Sounds excellent. Thank you, Dan.
You're welcome.
Okay. Apologize for that, but that will be a significant ability for us to do that from here rather than imposing on them to record classes and that kind of stuff. So that was good. That's fun stuff. We are going to continue talking about interlinears and Greek texts and English texts. So if you would be so kind as to open the workspace that we created last, which was your NAS, your ESV interlinear, and your Greek text interlinear all in one workspace. That's where I want to start today. Now, something really cool happened during the last class that I like, and that was that Brett pointed out something that I had forgotten that we could do, and so I want to start there. We were talking about how these different texts create a bridge between the English text and the Greek text, and we want that bridge. We really need to be able to do deeper studies by going to the Greek, getting to Greek. Now, does everybody have a workspace open with those three Bibles?
I don't have the. I don't. Interlinear.
Okay.
We were trying to do the update on the thing, but it's done now that I can create one.
Okay. You need to get to where I am eventually, and that is with your NAS on the left-hand side, your ESV reverse interlinear in the middle, and your UBS4 Greek text on the right. And make sure on your UBS4 you select the one that has the interlinear in that, and then just tile vertically your windows so they appear in this order. I was explaining last session, that the New American Standard, the King James, and the ESV have built-in Strong's numbers. And if you remember that, if you click on your New American Standard Bible window to make it active and you go up under View, you have a couple of choices. You can show inline Strong's numbers, or you can show interlinear Strong's numbers. And basically, that is the beginning of a bridge from the English to the Greek. Those Strong's numbers represent Greek words, and so you can actually do some Greek word studies from your English Bible. Now, not all of you, how many of you bought the Art and Gingrich? BDAG? So only a few of you have it. But that was what Brett mentioned the other day. I'm going to turn off my interlinear Strong's numbers for a second. And I want you to go with me. If you use your arrow keys on your keyboard, you should cycle through your Bibles, if you remember that. And we actually created a resource association that allowed us to control which Bibles were in that. I want you to go to the NIV. That was one of the ones that I had you put in this list. Now, the interesting part was that we right-clicked on a Greek word. For example, go to John chapter 21, verse 15. And I was demonstrating how from these other versions you cannot get to the Greek, and Brett very adeptly showed us that you can if you right-click and if you have the Art and Gingrich. For those of you that don't have it, you can follow along. Again, I don't like to sound like a salesperson for Logos, but if you don't have Art and Gingrich, save up your shekels and get it. It's a powerful resource. You know from using it in library research class, language and research last quarter, how often you cited that source for Greek word studies and that kind of thing. But what we did was we right-clicked on a word. So right-click on the word finished. And we went down to selected text. And Brett noticed that Art and Gingrich appeared in his list. I've moved mine to the very top so that it's easy to find. And if you select it, it actually opens. Well, see, there's a word that's not in it. Let's see if I can find another one real quick where it would be. Well, let's do it the easy way. Let's do the word love in John 21:15. And if I go down and select the word in my Art and Gingrich, it opens to agapao. Now, while I right-click, and everybody can do this, right-click on the word love in the NIV and go down to selected text. What is my option when I get to selected text? What am I looking at? I'm looking at the English word for love, right? You'll notice that my key link options are for English. So what bridge do I have here? I want you to think through this for a second because the concepts here are important. What are we doing here? What are we searching for by right-clicking here and selecting this English word love? Who can tell me? Somebody take a shot. Eli, what am I searching for? Okay, but I mean, be more specific. What am I searching with? The answer's easier than the question, right?
You're just searching in the English category.
I am searching for an English word, right? I'm still in an English data type. The way I know that is because you notice my key link options here are simply for English. I don't have any Greek words here to look at, right? I'm looking for the word love. Now, Art and Gingrich is showing up in my list. What does that tell you about the electronic resource for Art and Gingrich, Mike? I'm hoping this isn't going to blow people's minds too much, but this is important.
It's linked through the English.
It's got an English data type index. Now, when you go to the library upstairs and you pull Art and Gingrich off the shelf, how do you look up a word? You have to look up the Greek, right? What they have done in the electronic version of Art and Gingrich is they have built a bridge where? In Art and Gingrich or in your English Bible? It's in Art and Gingrich because you'll notice Art and Gingrich is searchable by English words. So what's going on in the background? You're selecting the word love. You select Art and Gingrich to search. And somewhere in the background, Art and Gingrich is saying that word love is agapao. And so here's the word study for agapao. Okay? So that was the bridge that Brett discovered. Now, that's kind of cool. But the important thing to understand is that we're still searching for English data types. There are no other data types in the NIV than English. I can't search for the Greek word. I can't look at the form of the Greek word. I can't look at its morphology. I can't do anything but search for an English word. Okay? It just so happens that Art and Gingrich has this built in. Now, here's the problem, and here's why I had forgotten about this functionality. I'm going to close Art and Gingrich for a second. Now, we talked about this earlier. This dialogue in John chapter 21 between Jesus and Peter, are they using the same Greek word for love? No. Jesus is using agapao. Peter keeps responding with a Greek word phileo, right? So, if I look in verse 15 here, when I selected my first one, I selected Jesus' word for love. If I scroll down to this next part of the passage and right-click on the word love in Peter's response, and go down to selected text and select the Art and Gingrich, what did it take me to? It took me to the word study for agapao. I didn't go to phileo. Why did I not go to phileo?
Because the words you have highlighted.
And what word do I have highlighted?
Love, but it's actually the other one.
I have the English word love. The NIV doesn't know what the Greek word is. There's no way for the NIV to tell Art and Gingrich what the Greek word is. It's just the English word love. So while this is a bridge, and the bridge is built in Art and Gingrich to look up some Greek words, why can't you trust it? It's not making a distinction to the manuscript form of the Greek word, okay? It's providing a bridge, but the bridge is only built halfway across the river. All it knows how to do is say, it's love. Okay, well, the first most common use in the New Testament for love is agapao. I'll just show you agapao and see if that's what you want. Okay? Because the NIV does not have any underlying data types in it to point you to the Greek, there's no way for it to tell Art and Gingrich or any resource that we're looking at the word phileo rather than agapao. Okay? We're still searching for an English data type. It just happens that Art and Gingrich has an English index built into it. Now, I know that's deeper thinking than where we've been, but do you start to understand the importance of data types and the information that's built into your electronic Bible? If you're searching for English, there are limitations to what it can tell you because it only knows the English word. The English word may be translated by 15 different Greek words. But if you start with an English data type, it's not going to know the differentiation between those different Greek words.
Two questions. One, if you do that, does it take you by default to the most commonly occurring Greek word, like love, agapao?
That appears to be the thinking.
The second thing is, do we need to move up our Art and Gingrich like you did in our English data type if we wanted it to appear? Because I know in mine, just the English data type appears first, and then it goes to the default.
Okay. I want to make sure that everyone could hear Mike's questions. The first question is, does it default to the most commonly used Greek word? From the tests that I did last night, that appears to be the case. But I can't say definitively that that's their thinking. I don't find any documentation that tells me that's how it works. But from the few tests that I did, it seems like it goes to the most common Greek word for that English word. The second one is then, should we promote Art and Gingrich, or a book like Art and Gingrich, higher up in our English key link options, just in case? My answer to that is no. And it's because I don't personally want to go to a Greek reference from an English data type. I want to go from a Greek data type so that I know that I'm looking at the specific word that I'm asking for. There's too much possibility that you're going to have this scenario where you're looking at an English word, but you're not going to get to the proper Greek word. You're going to get to the most common one, but you're not going to get to the one that's being used in that specific instance in the text right there. And what you need to learn from here on out is that we need to be precise about what words we talk about. When we say Jesus is using a particular word for love, you need to be able to confirm that in your own mind from the Greek, right? I mean, isn't that really what we're trying to get to? What was the word that God inspired that was placed there? Well, it's agapao. What's the word that he inspired John to write that Peter responded with? Phileo. That's the word you're after. I don't want English to tell me that agapao is most common. Well, that's great. It's a nice little bit of information. But if I want to teach about how Peter responded to Jesus, I need to understand the difference between those two words. And we're going to look at how we can get there and how that all functions, okay? That's why we're looking at these three different versions side by side, these interlinears, if you will. Make sure that you use your arrow key and get back to the New American Standard. Now I want to show you something. I'm at a New American Standard. Is New American Standard, what language is it translated into? English, yeah, it wasn't a hard question. It's an English Bible, right? Right-click on the word Peter used for love in John 21:15. Now you'll notice that selected text doesn't just have love next to it. It has two words, love and phileo. Select phileo, and if you have, you don't have to click on anything yet, but what data type am I looking at here? How do I know that? Okay, it's a Greek word. What in this list, this little pop-up window that I now can do things with, is telling me that I'm looking at the Greek data type? Third option from the top says key link options for Greek. I started with an English Bible, but now I'm looking at the Greek word. And you'll notice that the Greek word is correct. It's phileo. And if I select Art and Gingrich, it's going to open to phileo instead of agapao. Why? Because I searched from the Greek, not from the English. And that's the difference. Brett, do you see what's going on here? I really appreciate you mentioning that the other day, because it really is an important aspect of what we're doing here. You can think that certain bridges are there when they are, but they're not. And you have to ask yourself, what am I searching with? What data type am I looking at? And I know this conversation of data types and key links maybe sounds really confusing at times, but it's fundamentally important for you to get the power out of this software by understanding where you're starting from. If I'm starting with the English word love, I'm limited as far as how far I can go and remain accurate to the text. But if I start with a text that has underlying data types, then I can go deeper more accurately. Why does the New American Standard tell me that Peter uses the word love and he uses phileo? How is it able to tell me that? View your inline Strong's numbers. Go ahead and click on your New American Standard. Show your inline Strong's numbers or interlinear Strong's numbers, either way. Now, without even going to it, notice that the red word for love in Jesus' words is Greek Strong's number 25. What Strong's number is Peter's response? 5368. See, built into the New American Standard, because these Strong's numbers are here, is a bridge to the actual Greek that's being used. So if I right-click on an English word in the New American Standard, I can get to a form of the Greek word. Now, what is morphology? I mentioned that word the other day. Yeah, it's kind of the building blocks of the word. It's the description of the construction of the word. The morphology is simply whether it's a noun or a verb or an adjective, or if it's singular or plural, if it's first person or third person, okay? So now from the New American Standard, can I tell what the morphology is of the word that Peter used? No. All I can do is get to the word phileo. I can click on the Greek Strong's number. I can right-click on the text. I can look at the root word that he used. But I don't know if it's a present tense verb or if it's an aorist participle. There's no way for me to tell what the morphology is from the New American Standard. The bridge is limited simply to the root words, and that's because it's using Strong's numbers. Okay? Has anybody in here played with a Strong's concordance before? Okay, so you kind of know when you look something up in Strong's, it just goes to the root word. I need you to understand, and those of you that haven't had Greek yet, I need you to understand the difference between a library form of a word and a manuscript form of the word. For example, if I want to find the word loved, I'm reading some poet's poem, and he uses the word love, and I'm from Mars, and I don't know what this word is, but I know what a dictionary is. What word am I going to look up in a dictionary? Am I going to look up loved? What am I going to look up? I'm going to look up love. Love is the lemma. It's the lectionary form. It's the lexical form of the word. I'm not sure how Will describes it in Greek class for you guys. He's not going to use the term lemma. He's most likely going to, when I took Greek here, the instructor I had referred to it as the lexical form of the word. It's what that root is, okay? He uses lemma. Good. That'll make life easier. Both words are correct. It's just a vocabulary issue. But understand that we do that all the time in English. If I'm looking for the term running, well, if I need to look it up in the dictionary, I'm going to look up run. Running is a form, a manuscript form, of the lemma, run, right? Make sense? Well, Greek is the same way. And there are going to be times when all I want to do is get to the lexical form of the word. I just want to know what word he's using here. I really don't care if it's first person, second person, third person. I don't care if it's past tense or present tense or aorist tense. All I care is what word did he use? Well, from my New American Standard, I have that bridge, and I can follow that link. Does that make sense? You need to understand, though, that not all Bibles have that bridge. What 3 Bibles have that bridge, Amanda? Levi, what 3 Bibles have the bridge? New American Standard, because we just did that. ESV and the King James. Those are the only 3. Now, I may be wrong because they may have just changed. Let me check. The New Revised Standard may also. I just read something last night that said the New Revised Standard may. It may just be the interlinear. Yeah, the New Revised Standard reverse interlinear is going to have Greek Strong's numbers as well, but those are going to be the only ones. So the reason I mention this is because we typically here use New American Standard, New King James. Those are kind of the core Bibles we use here at school, right? I mean, some of you guys are ASV users maybe, but we typically go to New King James, New American Standard. If you want the extra bridge in your software, you need to use the New American Standard, not the New King James, when you're working in Libronics. Mike.
I don't know if anybody else had this problem, but all of my resources that I moved up in my Greek, if I write Greek on an English word, such as love, and then I go down to selected text, and I go to the Greek word, and then I go to my Martin English, it won't take me to the word, it will only take me to the source heading, the first page. But any other source that I don't have it moved up, but it's on the list below, it'll take me to the word.
At the break, I need to see what's going on there. Typically what happens is trying to do Greek searches from your NAS quite often will get you to the title page of a resource. TD&T, Art, and Gingrich are the 2 biggies. What is it trying to tell you? It's not there. A lot of times there may not be a Greek word study for that particular word in Art and Gingrich. Art and Gingrich, Denny wasn't positive the other day, and I'm not either. I don't believe Art and Gingrich claims to cover every Greek word in the New Testament. Now, it's certainly very expansive, but I don't know that it's comprehensive. It may be, but I'm not aware of that detail. TD&T, Theological Dictionary of the New Testament, I know is not comprehensive. It does not cover every Greek word in the New Testament. So if you get to a title page, one of two things is happening. Either the word is not in there, or you are searching for a manuscript form of the word, and you don't look up manuscript forms, you look up lemmas or lexical forms. It's kind of like going to the dictionary, and it's not apples to apples because we would do it differently. But my example of running and run, okay, run is the lemma form of the word running. If I went upstairs and looked up the word running, I might find it. What I would certainly find in a print edition is I may not find running, but I would find run, right? And I would say, oh, okay, I'm looking for run. Well, when you tell your lexicons to find running, it doesn't automatically know to show you run. You asked for it to show you first person present tense of that particular verb, and it's not in there. So it's going to take you to the title page and say, can't find it. I'm going to show you how the software reminds you of those things as we get into the interlinears and as we go to these broader bridges that reach us from the English to the Greek. Again, think of a bridge. This bridge is limited. It's there. There is functionality here for me to get from the English to the Greek, but it's limited. I can only do so much from my English text. Once I exhaust that study, I have to move to a Greek text of some form or another in order to go deeper. Make sense? Now, I want you to, with that being said, I want you to make your screen so that you mostly just see the New American Standard and your UBS 4 interlinear. And I want you to go ahead and make the UBS 4 bigger or do whatever. I just don't want you to deal with the ESV just yet. Make sure that you have the Greek UBS 4 interlinear open. And I'm going to make mine look like yours here for just a second. I'm going to turn on my defaults. Now, what is an interlinear? We started to have this conversation the other day, but again, this stuff is important for us to get a grasp of. What is an interlinear, Manny? Pardon? Okay, it's the original text in the English. How are they arranged? Okay, and in what order? If it's a Greek text interlinear, where's the text and what's in interlinear? Okay, we did this the other day just a little bit with Miles, having him try to read the Greek, and he couldn't. Big surprise. Denny could, since Denny's the Greek scholar. I need to get one of those in even while he's not here. But we were looking at a particular verse. We don't have to change to anything special. But it's difficult if we can't read the Greek. We have difficulty looking at the Greek text by itself and understanding what it says. So for those of us that are not Greek scholars, we need a broader bridge. And an interlinear is the first highway that we have built. Okay? What it now does is, you'll notice in your window, you should have 4 lines. Does everybody have 4 lines of text showing? You're probably set to the default. You should be, unless you've messed with it. The first line is what? But what do we call it? What do you think it's called? The manuscript. It is the manuscript form of the word. I want you to start getting used to this idea of manuscript form and the lemma or lexical form. So it is the manuscript. If I go up under View interlinear, and turn off everything except manuscript. Just uncheck those boxes and say OK. I now have a Greek text just like you guys are going to have if you haven't bought your UBS text already. When you get to Greek 3, you're going to translate from the Greek text. Most likely you're going to translate 1 John. Yes?
How did you do that again?
Go up under View, Interlinear, and turn off everything except for manuscript. Leave manuscript checked. Turn off everything else and say OK. Now, mine is verse by verse, and that's because I also have, under the same View menu, Bible text only selected. If I turn off Bible text only, yours may look like this. It's just a giant paragraph of Greek. Okay? Now, just so that we know, Miles, go ahead and start reading John 21, starting at verse 1 from the Greek text. Can't. See, there's not much of a bridge here, is there? But this is what we want to get to, isn't it? I mean, this is the current manuscript form of the Greek text that we use. So this is where we want to be. How do we look at it? Now, go up under View. I want you to go ahead and turn Bible text only back on, because sometimes it's easier to look at these verse by verse anyway. But I want you to also, once you select Bible text only, that's going to close. But go back up under View, select Interlinear, and I want you to select English Literal Translation. Is the only other check mark I want you to put on, and say OK. What did it do? It put the English in between. Now, if you go to a store and buy an interlinear Greek New Testament, this is what it's typically going to look like. It's just going to have the Greek and it's going to have the English literal translation, or it's going to have, it's going to have the English literal translation in it. Now, I'm at John 21, verse 15. Look at verse 1. Or verse 15. So when they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Okay? Now, let's read the English literal translation of the Greek. After these demonstrated himself again, the Jesus to the learners on the Sea of the Tiberias, he demonstrated but thusly. It's because that's the wrong verse. I didn't realize I didn't have these key links. Sorry. When then they ate a meal, says to the Simon Peter, the Jesus Simon of John, love you me more than these? He says to him, yes, Master, you know that I love you. He says to him, graze the lambs of me. Now that's easy to understand, isn't it? Now I do think it's interesting. We sing a song, love you thou me more than these, feed my sheep. Does everybody know that song? Look at the Greek literal translation. Love you me more than these. So they literally took the literal English translation of the Greek when they wrote that song, which I find interesting. But we at least now can read it. Miles, were you able to read any of it before?
Not really.
Hoti, maybe, huh? The first word? Yeah, sure. Now we at least have a shot, right? We can figure out a little bit more of what's going on. Now I want you to go up under View, select Interlinear. And I want you to turn on Manuscript Transliterated. Should be the second one in your list. And say OK. Mine just changed screens, so I need to get back to 21:15. Now what did it do? JR, what's there now?
The manuscript and the right translation.
it's showing you a transliterated version of the Greek. Brett, you had your hand up?
I was just gonna say, it looks like it's the same.
It is. That's exactly what it is. Now, I need to say, again, emphatically, I'm not a Greek scholar. But you can start to at least make out some of these words. Hote, Iristisan, Lege tos Simeon, Simoni, Petro, Ho, Jesus, Simon. Do you see how? Now, I couldn't do that from the Greek before. Actually, I can do some of that. Agapas, Me, Pleon, Tuton. Well, I can now pronounce the Greek. That's pretty cool, isn't it? Do you see the bridge that's being built? Now we've got the literal English, and we've got a way that we can try to pronounce the Greek words. Go up under View. Go to Interlinear. And select Greek lemma. Just Greek lemma, not the transliterated, but just Greek lemma. And say OK. And mine keeps bouncing around, so I have to keep going back because my screen's so small. Now, underneath the transliterated manuscript, you actually have the lexical forms of the words, the library forms of the words. Now you're seeing the roots. Okay? Notice the third word in. Right here, you'll notice you now see the word epistao for eat. That's the root of this Greek word, eristisan, sane, eristisane, eristisane. See, my pronunciation isn't all that great either. I'm going to show you later how to find out how to pronounce them. But now I've got the lexical form of the word. Go up under View, go to Interlinear. Turn on Greek lemma transliterated. Now do we know what we're looking at? Aristao is the Greek word there that I was looking at before, and I can see that now. And lego is the lexical form of lege that's being used there. Do you see what's happening? Now, I realize for some of you that don't have Greek yet, this is going to be real confusing. But I need you to stay focused here because this will become very important later on. Especially after you've had Greek, you're going to want to know how to do these things. And I can't just skip it because you don't have Greek yet. So in some ways, you just have to muddle through the concepts. This interlinear, being Greek, has two things in it that are important. Right-click on that third word that we've been looking at, aristao, and go down to selected text. Now, you're going to see 4 words and a phrase. Actually, 5 words. There's 6 options, but you're going to see 4 words. The first one, what is the first word in that list? It's the manuscript form of the word. You may not be able to pronounce it, but it is the manuscript form of that word. Do you see that? What's the word underneath it? The transliterated manuscript form of the word. What's the third one? The lexical form of the word, and Logos has been so nice to mark that as your lemma. In parentheses, you should see the word lemma. That's going to be important because when you look it up in a dictionary, you want to look up the lemma form. So select lemma. That's going to bring up your Greek key link options. Select Little Kittle or TD&T, whichever one, and click on it. And I get, in the abridged version, I don't get it. Does it appear in the other one? Yeah, I bet it doesn't. No. So, what did I do wrong, Mike? That word study does not appear in TD&T. Now, I'm trying to use TD&T because I know that most all of you should have it. Let me see if it actually appears in Arndt and Gingrich. My guess is that it's not going to. Oh, it does. See, apostao appears in Arndt and Gingrich. And it means to eat breakfast, specifically. Or to eat a meal. So from the Greek text, now I have more power, because from the New American Standard, I could only get to the lexical form of the word, the lemma form of the word, but now I can actually look at the morphology of the word. Go under your view to interlinear and select morphology. Say OK. When I hover over the word, in the lower left-hand corner of my screen, there's a whole bunch of words. Okay? That is the morphology of the word. This particular verb is a verb aorist active indicative, third person plural. Now, again, those of you that haven't had Greek yet, I realize that sounds like Greek. It's actually English. But it's describing the morphology of a Greek word. You'll also notice that now you have these giant capital letters underneath all of your Greek words. Notice when I hover over apostao, I have VAAI 3P. Does that seem like it makes sense? Look at the words at the bottom of your screen. Verb, aorist active, indicative, third person, plural. So these large capital letters are trying to clue you in to what's happening here. Just hover over those capitals. Are you getting anything on your cursor? You should get a little window that pops up that shows the morphology. Do you? Mine kind of is and isn't sometimes. My computer's acting interesting. Now, go over to the word Simon. The first occurrence of the word Simon. NDSM. What is that, Terry? What is the morphology of that word? Look in your lower left-hand part of your screen. He just determined the morphology of the Greek word. Now explain to me what dative means. You don't know yet, but does it, right now that doesn't matter. What matters is that you know that this is a dative noun. Now, as Will goes deeper, you're going to learn what a dative is, okay? And all of that will make sense. And I'm going to show you how you can find out what dative is as we go along. But do you see how from the English, all we could do is get to the lexical form. Now we can determine what the case of the word is, whether it's singular or plural, whether it's a verb or a noun, whether it's present active or aorist. There's all of this terminology that we can get. Now, right-click on that word Simon. You'll notice that you can still, because of this interlinear, get to an English key link option, right? As long as I select the fifth one down, I'm looking at English. And the way I know is because you'll notice it says key link options for what? For English. Why can I do that from this Greek text? Because of the interlinear. It's all built, all of these data types are built into each word in the interlinear. Cool, isn't it? Now, there's one more I want you to turn on for just a second. Go up under View, Interlinear, and turn on English Gloss. And say OK. What on earth happened? You have all this glossary information about each word underneath each word, and it gets you to the point where you can't even tell what the text is anymore. You get so lost because of the way it wraps line endings and stuff, that it just becomes unmanageable. I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend that you turn English Gloss off and you just leave it off. There's other ways to find the English Gloss, but doing it through an interlinear just is not profitable. So go back under View, Interlinear, and turn off English Gloss. I just wanted to show you what it did. Now, again, I'm not a big Greek guy. I mean, I like to study the Greek, but starting with this Greek text and dealing with it from the standpoint, let me get back to verse 15, looking at that manuscript line is confusing to me. I mean, hote, un, aristeson, lege, to, I mean, it's like, all right, whatever. Well, maybe I want my English up there. When you go to View, Interlinear, you can change the order of how all of these appear in this interlinear. This is a completely customizable interlinear. Select English Literal Translation. Just click on it once, the name, not in the little checkbox. And then you'll notice that your up and down key buttons become active. So move it up. Just click up. And move it all the way to the top. And say OK. I have just created an interlinear that starts with the English. Now, understand what you're seeing, though. You're seeing a direct, literal English translation from the Greek. You're not looking at an English translation of the Bible. You're looking at a direct, literal translation of the Greek. So, does that help me read it any better? Not really. I mean, we're still back to the strange word order problems that we had before. When then they ate a meal, says to Simon Peter, the Jesus Simon of John, love you me more than these. And some of the word orders get really difficult to follow. Go to Acts 2:38.
Okay.
Yeah.
View interlinear. It doesn't even have the English gloss. It says Strong's number. Mine doesn't have Strong's number, but it is an English gloss.
Are you in the Greek New Testament, the UBS 4 interlinear?
I did it for you. It pulls up everything that we see except where English gloss, it has Strong number instead.
Might
Wait,
be.
hang on just a second.
I think he's in a different
I
resource.
think you're right.
We don't have strong numbers on ours.
Because you shouldn't.
Some of the
The Greek text, the UBS 4 interlinear doesn't have Strong's numbers.
okay, if we want one that had strong, where would we go?
Back to your NAS would be the best place to go. Now understand why. Why do I not need Strong's numbers in a UBS 4 Greek New Testament? Because I've got every lexical form of the word anyway. I mean, I can get to the lemma, which is all Strong's is trying to do, is get us to the lemma form or the dictionary form of the word. If I'm in a Greek interlinear, I already have the lemma form. I just have to turn it on visibly in my interlinear. Does that make sense, Perry? So I'm starting to get into more highly developed tools. There are limitations to Strong's numbers. There's no morphology. There's basically all you can do is look up the lemma form of a word. Whereas now, if I'm dealing with my Greek text, even though I'm not a Greek scholar, I can look at how much information I can get about these Greek words right from this screen. Did you fix it, Whitney?
Yeah, you're right. You were in the other one, so I got him.
You were in the ESV.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I got him into the Greek New Testament.
But it's not the interlinear.
Right.
See, I'm not a prophet, or the son of a prophet, but I've been here before. I want you to understand, we jump to Acts 2:38. Read the literal translation of Acts 2:38. Peter, but toward them change mind, says, and let be immersed, each of you, on the name of Jesus Christ, into sending off of the sins of you, and you will receive the gift of the Holy Spirit. To you, for is the promise, and to the children of you, and to all the ones in far as many as might call them to Master the God. Does that sound like English? I mean, it is, and truthfully, we can make sense of that, can't we? I mean, we can start to play with it, but we're not used to it. So even moving the English up to that manuscript line in your interlinear, it helps, but it's not what we're used to, okay? But I wanted to show you that you can control all of these interlinear features. You can turn them off, you can turn them on, you can change their order. You can put the transliterate. One of the things I used to do was put the manuscript transliteration above the manuscript form or below. You can turn the morphology off if you're not interested in seeing that. You can turn off the transliterated part as you start to become more familiar with your Greek. And so you can customize this as your knowledge of Greek grows. But you're still starting from a Greek text. That's what I want you to understand. And so your search options are broader than they were from the New American Standard. Does everybody see that? Question?
Let's say that you might be able to say that. So when you say that if you got used to comfortable using interlinear, it makes Strong's basically worthless.
Strong. Well, it's not worthless, but it becomes obsolete.
Right, obsolete.
You really do start to see the limitations of looking things up in Strong's Concordance. When I need to not only understand that he's using the word agapao, but I need to understand, what is the tense of that verb? Is that important to the discussion? Go back to John 21, 15. If I could type. When I look at love here, and I'm going to go ahead and turn my morphology back on. What is the more? Oh, and it keeps jumping. I don't know why it's doing that today. John 21, verse 115. Okay. What is the morphology of the verb love that Jesus uses in this verse? So, present active indicative. Now, I know, again, that doesn't make any sense to you. It will soon. But Rick, what does present active mean? Do you remember?
Right now and continually on.
It's a continuous term. Jesus is saying, right now, do you love me? Are you continuing in your love for me? It's not, did you love me in the past? It's not, are you going to love me in the future? It's right here, right now. Continuous action, do you love me? What is the word for love in phileo that Peter is responding in? Present active indicative. Okay, same tense. So there's nothing in the tense of the verbs going on there. But you can't find that out any other way than to look at this kind of stuff. You follow? When you start to dig into the text, you need to look at what's being said. How is it being said? Is he referring to current time or past time? Is he referring to future tense? You know, how often do we look at things, especially in Scripture, people look at Revelation, it's talking about things that are going to happen in the future in certain parts of the book. And so the tense is not present active, it's future. And so you can get to all of that information from an interlinear. Now, what is the danger of an interlinear? Thank you, Mr. Preacher. It makes you lazy. Why does it make you lazy, you say? Why do I need to pay attention in Will's class? I mean, do I really need to know all these endings and all this parsings and, you know, o, ace, a, omen, ete, usi. Okay, well, I learned it, okay? I can just hover over it and Logos is going to tell me that it's a first-person aorist verb. Folks, don't take the shortcuts. I'm telling you right now that the temptation is going to be to just turn on Logos and say, okay, what is this word? But as you go deeper, as you grow, as you want to go deeper into the truths of God's Word, you need that background. You have to understand what's going on. We were talking today, and I'm going to show my ignorance while we're recording for everybody to see. But I'm talking with Brother William Woodson, who works at Freed-Hardeman University. He's a Logos user now. And a friend of his, Tom Childers, who teaches at Freed-Hardeman. And Brother Woodson came up to me and said, you need to show me how to search for, and then he rattled off a Greek morphology in like that time. I'm looking for every occurrence of a present aorist participle, whatever, and I know that's wrong, but I want to know where those are. Well, I could show him how to do it. My question is, why would you want to know? I mean, why search for that? Well, he has a reason, because his knowledge has developed to the point where there are constructions with that particular morphology that mean certain things, and he's looking for recurring terms like that in the New Testament to compare them. Well, I'm not even a deep enough Greek student to know why you would want to search for something like that, let alone how to search for it. You follow? I can search for it. I showed him in just a couple of seconds how you can search for it. Don't understand why you would, but I can do it. There's a flaw there, isn't it? And I'm hoping that you see it. Knowing how to use the technical aspects of the software is all wonderful and great. But if you don't know why you want to leverage the software or how you want to leverage the software, you're not doing yourself a whole lot of good. Make sense? Now, does that mean that I think that everybody has to get to the point where while they're preaching, they're translating live from their Greek New Testament up at the pulpit? No. I think that's admirable. I know a number of preachers who can do it, and it's awesome. But there's a happy medium maybe somewhere in between. You know, I've heard people tell Denny, I would really like to know as much Greek as you know. Well, devote the next 20 years to it, and you will. Seriously. That's probably about how long, maybe a little longer, that Denny's been working with Greek. So if you make yourself a serious student of the Greek for the next 20 years, you'll know as much Greek as Denny does. There's a local preacher, his name is Michael Harmon. Michael has not been formally trained in Greek, and he teaches directly from the Greek New Testament and translates on the fly. He spends, I think he has said, have you ever heard him talk about it, Rick? I think he spends 30 minutes every day, or it may only be 20 minutes every day, but he literally spends 15 to 30 minutes every single day translating Greek. He started out with the same book that you all have in Greek class, no teacher, and taught himself how to do it, and he has spent 15 minutes every day doing it. Now, he has spent 15 minutes every day doing it for the last 15 years, and he's to the point now where he can do it. I mean, he preaches from the Greek text very well, and he understands what he's looking at. It's a matter of commitment. What do you want to do? There's an old saying that if you're willing to read 15 minutes a day in a given field, you will become an expert in that field. Well, if you want to learn Greek, spend 15 minutes a day in the Greek, learning the Greek, you'll eventually know it. And you won't need tools like this. Now, I say that to say this. Most people are not going to put that kind of time into it. They're just not. Rick, your schedule as a preacher, do you have an hour every day extra?
I'd love one.
Yeah, of course you would. And as soon as they make a 27-hour day, you might get an extra 15 minutes, right? So, we got to recognize that for all of us, it's not going to be something that we're going to put that much effort into. But you need to put more effort into it than, well, I'll just turn on my software and go. Because you're not going to have the software with you always. When somebody asks you a question in the middle aisle after you've preached a sermon about that particular, you said that particular Greek word was something. What does that mean? Oh, I don't know. My software just told me that's what it meant, so let me go get my computer and I'll explain it to you. That's kind of lame, isn't it? So you need to go after the Greek more than just letting the software do it for you. So, what are the limitations of working with a Greek text interlinear? That's what we're looking at here. Perry, what do you see as difficult about this?
Well, I mean, just the word order.
Yep.
That's the biggest thing, I think.
That's the biggest thing. Is it still a Greek text? I mean, the word order is strange for us. We're not used to it. And that's why they have developed what they call a reverse interlinear. So, now I want you to go ahead and get your UBS 4 text kind of out of the way and make your ESV reverse interlinear larger so that you can see it. Okay, I am still at John 21:15. And I can start reading in my interlinear. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? And he said to him, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. And he said to him, feed my lambs. Better than graze my sheep from the literal, right? All I'm looking at here is what? I'm looking at the ESV. I'm looking at the English Standard Version Bible. The difference now is that it's a reverse interlinear, which means they have started with your English translation of the text. And they've put the Greek in as an interlinear instead. Now, I need to turn on my defaults, so I'm looking at all the same lines that you are. Just give me a second here. I don't always keep them all on. You'll notice that you got some really interesting things going on here. You got arrows, you got dots, you got triangles, you've got all these little numbers. Now, if you had to guess, JR, what do you think all these little numbers are? I mean, if you had to guess. John 21, verse 15. In the second line, you have Greek words and you have all these little numbers as footnotes. What do you think that might be? Doug, what do you think?
Maybe the order of the original.
Very good, Whitney. It's your word order. See, they have to change the Greek word order to line up with your English version, right? I mean, isn't that the problem that Perry just mentioned with dealing with a Greek text directly? His word order is weird. Well, if you start with an English translation and you put the Greek word underneath it, how do you reconstruct the Greek text? Well, you got to know where it was, right? You got to know what the word order is. So if you notice, the first two words, un, pote, you'll see that Hite has a number 1 next to it. That tells you that it was the first word in the Greek text. Now, if you take a peek back at your interlinear, your USB interlinear, what was the first word in the line? Hite. Un was the second word. Where do you get that? Right there. Now in the English, they had finished breakfast. We got 3 arrows and a word. Levi, what do you think the arrows are telling you? Take a stab at it. Where what goes? Okay, close. Eli?
Corresponds exactly with those in translation. You know, like
We have English words in our text that don't have Greek words?
the way they made it. Sorry.
Clarify?
When I'm just saying, like, maybe it's an English clarification of the words,
They don't
or
match up.
It's in the
Terry?
other word.
Yeah, it's all in
It's all in the third word. It's telling you that those 4 English words are translated by that one Greek word. That's what voice and case and morphology tells you. That the they, when you start getting to Greek verbs, the you or I or they is all part of the verb tense. It's all part of the construction, the morphology of the verb. It's rare that they actually have a word in the Greek for that. It's just built into the verb tense, the morphology. Does it make sense? So what the ESV reverse is telling you is that they had finished breakfast is all contained in that one word. Now, do you remember that when we looked up akastao, what did Art and Gingrich tell us? It meant eat, but what did it mean? Eat what? Breakfast. I mean, it was that specific. So they had finished eating breakfast, or they had finished breakfast, sorry, is all part of that word. And then you have parentheses around the next one. You'll notice, and sometimes it's a little hard to see, it's a little small, but you'll notice that under the word Jesus, it has the 8th word and the 9th word. Now, Todd and I were talking about this. Todd mentioned this earlier in Chinese. This first word, the O with the rough breathing over the top of it, that is the word ho, means what? Duh. It's a definite article. Guess what Chinese doesn't have? The definite article. Guess what Swahili doesn't have? Definite article. But what are the parentheses telling you?
Brackets show a group of Greek words translated by single English.
Now you're cheating, okay? Mike is cheating. I just caught him cheating. How did he cheat?
Covered over the place.
Hover over the parentheses, and it tells you that the brackets show a group of Greek words translated by a single English word or phrase. I wanted to see how long it was going to take for somebody to just hover over the little arrows or hover over one of the dots or something to start to show you what those are. Logos is built into a lot of these tools, explanations of what you're looking at, okay? So, the brackets indicate that ho, Jesus, is all translated by Jesus. Now, we don't often refer to Jesus as the Jesus, do we? But you know what? In Greek, quite often, it does. When it's talking about the God of heaven, the word is theos in the Greek. When it's talking about the God of heaven, what do you think it almost always includes? The definite article. Ho. Ho theos. The God. Now, how often when we get to God of heaven do we say the God? In our English, they drop the "the." They don't always translate it. And so that's what we're seeing here, is that our English translation, the ESV specifically, does not translate it, the Jesus said. It's just Jesus said. Do you see how the interlinear is lining up the Greek with your English? Go ahead, Rick.
The Ho also shows that Jesus is the nominative, where he's the subject. You know, it's subject predicate sort of thing.
That is correct.
Jesus is the subject of that sentence.
Now, that's interesting because if you look underneath it, the morphology is noun, nominative, singular, masculine. Now, again, those of you that haven't had Greek, and I know I'm saying this 8,000 times, but nominative nouns are typically the subjects of verbs, or subjects of sentences. Okay? So when you look for the nominative, what's he talking about? Who's the subject of this sentence? Well, Jesus is. Okay? So it's interesting that these interlinears, what the ESV reverse interlinear is doing is it's marrying the Greek text to your English translation by reorganizing the Greek words, but it shows you where they should be. Okay? I mentioned this to a friend of mine who is a local preacher who is kind of a Greek guy. I mean, he likes to do Greek studies, taught Greek before in places. When I mentioned this reverse interlinear, he just absolutely cringed because it was like, well, that destroys the Greek manuscript. You realize? I mean, that's where I mean, now you've completely lost the flow of the Greek. No, I haven't, because it puts it all back together if I need it. The word order numbering tells me where everything belongs. And more importantly, it shows me how multiple English words are translated by one Greek word. You'll notice down further on in that verse, son of John is all translated by one word. Do you love me? Do you love is all one Greek word. So we're starting to see that English and Greek don't exactly line up. Now, I'm going to get in trouble by saying that. There are multiple English words quite often that translate one Greek word. And so you need to know when that's occurring.
Do the arrows point to the word?
Yes. The arrows point you to the direction of the word. Now, in this particular passage, everything's pointing forward. There are occasions where it'll point backwards, okay, depending on space and that kind of stuff. But the arrow's pointing forward toward the word that is being translated.
There's verse 14, there's a green triangle.
Yes. In 14, there's one in 15 too. Yep.
Is that...
They show close to the English word and that's separate.
There you go. Now, what does that mean?
Oh.
Huh?
That's the answer.
That's the answer. You are correct. You get 100%. Phase 2 of the answer is, what does that mean?
No, I am.
Okay, so when you average the 0 you get on part 2 of the question with the A that you get on part 1 of the question, you're now at about a 50%.
That's about my average.
All it means is that word to is in a different sequence than the word that it's connected to. You'll notice that the arrow has a number. What's the number? So it's connected to word number 7, which is the word for disciples. So it's just telling you what word that English word is connected back to. It's out of order, and they can't draw a little curved arrow to show you back where it inserts. So it's just telling you that it belongs with word number 7. Make sense? Number 7 is the 7th word. So you look for the little subscript 7 in the Greek word, and it's actually mathetes, disciples. And so that you know that that word to is actually found in that word mathetes. Now, notice what else you have. You have, go up under your menu to view interlinear. Just like the other interlinear, you have all these choices. You have the ESV text. You have the Greek alignment. You have the Greek alignment transliterated. What am I going to see there? I'm going to see the Greek words with English letters so I can figure out how to pronounce them. Okay? I have the option for the Greek lemma. I have the Greek lemma transliterated. I have a space for the morphology, and I now have Greek Strong's numbers built into this. Look at all of the different data types that they have now put into this resource. Where it used to be if I did English studies, I would work with the New American Standard. If I wanted to do Greek studies, I would work from the Greek text. Now, I'm going to cancel this for a second. Now, when I right-click on the word disciples, mathetes, and I go down under selected text, look at all the choices I have. I have the English word disciples that I can do a word study from. I have mathetes, which is the manuscript form of the Greek word. I have the transliterated manuscript form. I have mathetes, the lexical form of the word that I can study from. So I can now have the best of both worlds. I can do all of the word studies that I can do from the New American Standard. I can do all of the word studies that I can do from the Greek interlinear. But I keep the flow and the readability of an English translation. It's all built together. This resource, as you start to learn to use it, is going to be one of the most powerful tools that you have in Logos. I don't really care if you're not a big fan of the ESV translation. It has problems. Guess what? So does yours, whatever one you use. I don't care what one you use. It has problems too. They all have some level of problem. So that's not a big deal. But the power and the resources that you can get to from this reverse interlinear from one source is really, really important. When I first started using Logos, I used to always have to keep an English Bible and a Greek text in my workspace so that I could get to Greek word studies and morphology from my Greek. I could get to lexical studies and English studies from my English, and I worked back and forth from those two windows. Guess what I can now do in my workspaces? I can replace both of those windows with the ESV reverse interlinear, and I can run all of the reports and do all of the searches I needed to do from one resource instead of two different ones. Powerful stuff. Really powerful stuff. So, understand what some of those little cryptic arrows and triangles and that kind of stuff are, but don't forget pop-up windows. Hover over these things and let them show you what they are. That's going to become particularly interesting when we start to look at the morphology of certain words. It's going to help us understand what an aorist is, or what a present indicative is. For example, in verse 14, I'm just looking at this word revealed. Okay? Hover over the morphology, and it says verb finite, third person, single aorist, indicative passive. All right? What is aorist? How am I going to find that out? Okay? We're going to be able to run reports and do things where we can just hover over the word aorist, and it's going to give us an explanation of what the aorist tense is all about. All right? Now, I wish that you could just single click on that while it's hovering, and it would keep that window open, but it won't. So we'll talk about how to get to some of those reports. Questions about these interlinears? Are you seeing? The most important thing I want you to see from this section is the difference in the bridges from the English text to the Greek text with each one of these three different kinds of resources. Your English Bible only provides you a certain amount of access to the Greek, and that's it. You can't go any deeper. Your UBS Greek text provides considerably more access, but it's a Greek text. So the flow of the words, the order of the words, for some of us can be very confusing. The ESV merges both of those together, including the Greek Strong's numbers, if you still want to do Greek Strong's number studies, and so on, all together in one resource. Really neat stuff. Okay, let's go ahead and take a break, and we'll pick it up in 15 minutes.
That's worth the price of this program right there.
It's your protein.
That's awesome.
Recording again. Resumed. Okay. There's one other thing I want to show you. We're back from break, for those of you that are on the internet. I want to show you one other neat thing about the ESV that I think is kind of cool. If you will go under View, Interlinear, the ESV reverse interlinear. We're still in that interlinear. And I want you to turn everything off except for the ESV text. I want you to go to John 21, verse 15, where we've been. And in your Bible window, not in your your interlinear window, but in your Bible window, change to the ESV. You should have included that in your group, I think. I'm pretty sure we added that to the group. And right-click on the word love in your ESV, not the reverse interlinear, but your ESV. What choices do I have when I look at selected text? I only have English key link options, right? I don't have anything else. Now, go over to the reverse interlinear that is only showing me the English, and right-click on that same word love. What choices do I have? I have everything. I have all of the information that's available in the interlinear. The English word love I can do a study of. I can do a study of the Greek lexical form. I can do a manuscript form. I can do all kinds of things from what appears to be an English translation. Do you understand why? Because all those data types are built in to that translation. I mean, they're all there. I've just got them hidden. Notice under selected references, I haven't changed my word. I can do a search on the Greek Strong's number and so on. So all of that information is buried in this ESV interlinear. And if I change it from Bible text only, I'm just looking at what appears to be an English translation, but I can go as deep as I want in a Greek study from that English translation. Pretty neat stuff. Notice too that from the English, just hover over the English word in your ESV for love, and I get nothing at the bottom. Now, hover over the English word for love in the reverse interlinear, and I have a whole parsing. I have all of the morphology along the bottom part of my screen in that lower left-hand corner. That word for love is a finite second-person singular present active indicative from the English. Neat, isn't it? Okay? So, very powerful tools for the ESV. Rick, and many of you, I don't know how many of you know Rick Walker. Rick is the preacher at the Golden Church of Christ and has been there for 16 years. Rick made a comment to me just before break, or right after, as we started break, that is really important. And I want to echo his thoughts. Rick, what were you telling me about?
We're spending a bunch of time looking at various Greeks and language and all the various things that we can do with it, and it's great and all well and good. My concern for you brothers is that sometimes if you get into the habit of it, where every sermon it deals with, well, the Greek says this, that, or the other, I think there's two unintended messages that should be sending. The first is, I'm really smart because I know all this stuff. And I don't think that sort of attitude is appropriate in a proclaimer of God's Word. And the second is you're telling your congregation, unless you can do the Greek, you can't read your Bible. And instead of promoting Bible study and Bible reading and things of that nature, what you're actually promoting is the thought that, well, since I don't know the Greek language, there's really not a whole lot of sense in me trying to pick this thing up and read it, because, well, I just don't know what the Greek says.
And that is important. So often, it starts to appear that it's just showing off. I mean, there are ways to talk about what the Greek says without beating your congregation over the head that they don't know the Greek. I mean, there are ways to work that into the sermon, and I kind of want to, maybe find the happy middle, and I think Rick does too. There are times when it's important to convey what the Greek means there. I mean, if you're going to teach this section of John, for example, I don't know how you can without at least mentioning that there's something interesting going on here with the words. But you don't have to pronounce, super long Greek words and talk about aorist present participles and that kind of stuff. You can simply describe what's happening from the Greek without trying to sound overly scholarly. Do an audience evaluation. Make sure that you're aware of what your audience knows and what their tolerance for that kind of stuff is. It can be very off-putting, since you're not supposed to end a sentence with a preposition. It can be very, you can alienate yourself from your own congregation if every time you get up there it seems like it's Greek study day. Well, that's not what it's about. But at the same time, it's important for you to have these tools that you can go deeper and you can dig and really discover those nuances of God's truth. And that's, we have to remember, and we have to start teaching our congregations too, that the Bible was not written in English. It wasn't written in our language. And so there are some nuances, there are some verses, quite honestly, they're poorly translated from the Greek. And we need to make those aware when we get to them. But we don't need to thump people over the head. Questions about the interlinears, the ESV. Oh, and also with the ESV, as with the other one, you can change the order of all of these things. You can make the Greek morphology at the top. You can move the alignment around. Any of these can be changed just like they could in the other one, so that you can create a customized reverse interlinear that fits you. If you don't ever use Strong's numbers, well, why have it take up room? Turn them off. You can still get to the information about them because the data type is built in. You don't necessarily need them visible. Were you going to say something? Yeah. Okay. All right. So, that being said, I want to go ahead and start to go through some menu items with you. You can go ahead and leave your Bible open. You can close the interlinears for now. We're not going to do much on Greek stuff.
Which ones are we turning back on?
Which ones were you turning what back on? Just hit default. Go back to your Bible window. Get back to the NAS 95 update so that we're all looking at the same thing. Now there are some... What I wanted to start to do is I want to start going through some of these menus so that you can start to see some of the tools and searches that are available, some of the things that you can do to enhance your study. One of the things is under this View menu. We've already looked at a number of things under View. We've looked at the inline Strong's numbers and the Bible text only. The other one that I just want to mention real briefly is this Zoom. Some of you, I was noticing Mike's got like 1600 by 1200 screen resolution on his laptop. So all of his Greek stuff is like this big. And my aging eyes, we were talking about some stuff at break, and I'm like, I don't see it. So use the Zoom. You can change how large things appear in your windows. You can see from mine that it gets quite large. Now, I'll be honest with you. I have no earthly idea why they put 400%. Basically, you can look at a letter at a time. But truthfully, if you were projecting in a classroom environment and, you wanted to show just one verse at a time or so, you could do that at 300%. You know, if you were going to study through this in a Bible class and you had your software running and you wanted to project it this way, it's not a horrible way to do that, but I find that between 100% and 125% is where I like to be, which means typically I'm at 110. But just know that you can change the size of those resources to reflect larger text if you need it bigger. And for those of you that are 20-something, you will need it bigger someday, so don't make fun. All right. I want to start in the File menu. Now, this may seem silly, but we're going to find some things hidden here that we wouldn't find any other way. Every Windows program that you use has a File menu. What is it for? Doug, since you're my computer guy, what is the File menu for? It's typically how you open and create new files. It's how you print files. It's where you save files, is the general gist of it. Now, what kind of files can I open and close with Libronics? I can't open whole new Libronics. Workspaces is one. But I want you to look at File New. There are some things that are kind of hidden, some documents that you can create that are here. Now you remember that some of these we could get to from the home page. For example, and I'm going to have some that you don't have. I'm sorry about that, but that's the way it goes. First one on my list is a Bible reading plan. Is that the first one for everybody else's? So, this is how you can create a Bible reading plan without going to the home page. Do you remember when we talked about how to create a Bible reading plan? And you can create a custom Bible reading plan right here. You can also open Bible reading plans from the File menu. We'll look at that in just a second. I'm not going to recover the things that I've already talked about, but I want to make you aware of where they are. Graphical query we're going to get to later. Graphical query is a visual search engine that allows you to draw a diagram of what you're looking for with arrows and words and all kinds of things that is extremely powerful. It's also, in my way of thinking, complicated. So we're going to deal with that when we talk about searches, because we're going to spend a considerable amount of time in this class doing a variety of different kinds of searches, because that's really what we want to get to, is where we can leverage the computing power to find things in the text. That's what it's really all about. The next one is a note file. We're going to actually deal with how to take notes in the software at the end of the class, so we're not going to go there now. My next one is personal book. You don't have that one, I'm sure. Prayer list. Where else could we make a prayer list? From the home page. Well, we can do it all from here. And you'll notice if you launch these and just say, okay, if you launch the prayer list, it looks just like it did when we launched it from the home page. I mean, there's nothing different about any of this. So understand that it's just a different way to get to it. We're now kind of in manual mode, and so we can get to everything that we can do on the home page from other places within Libronics. The first one that I really want to get, well, I don't want to say that. Never mind. Reference list is a place to store data types. I haven't found this particular function all that useful yet, but we'll talk about that more later as well. Remote library search. This is the first one I want to show you in here, because we haven't talked about this at all yet. I mentioned it, and so open remote library search. Now, if your internet connection were live, which it's not, what you can actually do from here is search a number of international libraries right from here. Now, the ones that I have listed that show up in your list, if you click the search button right here, it's going to bring up this remote library search, and you're going to have two major libraries, national libraries and theological libraries. If you click on the little arrow key next to them, and I'll expand this window out so that you can see it better, you'll notice all the libraries online that you can search. Library of Congress, National Library of Australia and New Zealand, Singapore, Royal Library of Sweden, and then theological libraries, you'll scroll down, Duke University, Dallas Theological, Fuller Theological, Gonzaga. One of the ones I want you to notice is about, 10 or 20 down the list, Iliff School of Theology. The Iliff School of Theology is right here in town. It's just right across town. So you can actually search their library from here. And if I wanted to, let's say for example, let's say some mean instructor wants you to come up with as many resources as you can find for something called the documentary hypothesis. It's and they want you to come up with like 5 pages of resources for the documentary hypothesis. And then you got to put them in MLA format and all of that kind of stuff. Well, I could just say, I want to search the Library of Congress, and I want to search for the subject of the documentary hypothesis. I can't. Hypothesis. The documentary hypothesis, and I click search. You won't because you don't have an internet connection.
Thank you, Mike.
We're trying to learn.
We wonder how this would be.
But guess what? I have an internet connection. Now, it's doing its searching. It finished its search. And you'll notice that here are a bunch of books. Josh McDowell's Evidence That Demands a Verdict. There are some German resources and that kind of stuff. All just by searching the topic of documentary hypothesis. Now, if I wanted to, I can search multiple libraries at once. I can do all kinds of stuff. I can even export this list once I'm finished. I can click on Export, and I can export it as bibliographic citations in MLA format and export it to Microsoft Word or into a text file, and it will save them all for me.
Oh, that's neat.
Now, don't you wish you knew about that before last quarter? Now do you understand why I didn't tell you about it before last quarter? Because you needed to learn how to do it on your own. But you can search libraries this way and find resources. So it's kind of neat that you can do that right from within Libronics. I'll be honest with you, I don't use it very often, but it's there. If you go under File New again, you have sentence diagramming, and sentence diagramming is a visual tool where you can actually diagram sentences with all the lines and all the connectors and all that kind of stuff that you want to. If we have time, we may look at that later on in the chapter or in the quarter. Sermon file you probably don't have. I'm going to show you this real quick just because it's nifty. It's an add-on for Libronics, but what it allows you to do is it allows you to create 2 books that belong to you in your library. One is for your sermon outlines. The other one is for your illustrations. I'm going to go ahead and open this for a second. What it allows me to do is take a Word document that contains my sermons, and I can actually, I could do my sermon outline right here, although it's probably not the best place to do it, but I can compile these sermons into an electronic book that is searchable. I'm going to go ahead and close this for a second and show you my electronic book. I'm just going to do Control L to get to my library. I'm going to go to Author. I'm going to type in Hite. And you'll notice that there's my name. And I have a Sermons of Michael Hite resource. And when I open it, these are a number of sermons that I have the outlines for as an electronic book.
You might pick up those things that will refer to.
Now, what you need to understand is that you cannot share these electronic books. This is for your personal management of your sermon outlines and that kind of stuff. I can't make a copy of the Sermons of Michael Hite and give it to you and have it function in Libronics. It won't work. So these are just for you. But notice the information that you have about these sermons. Now, this is all information that I had to put in, but the name of my sermon was Giants and Grasshoppers. These are all of the references, scripture references, major references that are in the sermon. I've got the name of the document, and if I click on it, it's going to open my Microsoft Word document. I can give it topics. This particular sermon is about topics of trust, faith, and strength. It was delivered, the last time I delivered it was February 1st of 2006 in Chamala, Tanzania. And you can have a list a mile long of where it was delivered the last time so that you don't have the embarrassing thing of visiting someplace and preaching and giving them the same sermon that you just gave to them 5 trips ago. Yes?
So what's the real advantage of doing this in Libronics instead of Microsoft Word?
All of this information.
But you inputted it yourself, right?
I had to type in the topics and that kind of stuff. Yes. But I will show you why it becomes important in just a second. And then I've got my outline right here, right in front of me with all of my information. If I printed this out, it would be the same way I did my outline when I preached it. So, what is the big deal? I mean, so you keep it in Libronics, big whoop. Well, you'll notice the one that you guys saw this morning was the one that I called the Worthy Walk, and it was Colossians 1, 9 through 12 was the sermon. So I'm going to close this book for a second, and I'm going to send my Bible to Colossians 1, 9 through 12. So now I'm in my pericope. I know that I preached this, but if I go up under Tools, Bible Study, Passage Guide, and I run a passage guide on Colossians 1, which is taking a minute. I want to go ahead and run it. At the bottom of my passage guide, I now have something that we didn't have before. I have a section in my passage guide called My Sermons. That's why it's more powerful than just keeping them in Microsoft Word. You still keep your Word documents around, but now it's all searchable. So my sermon outline, if I click on this, it opens my electronic book, and I look at my sermon outline based on Colossians 1, 9 through 12. So while I'm studying through Colossians, I happen to hit this section. You know, I think I did a sermon on this one time. Well, did I? And where did I preach it last? And what did I say about verse 11? You know, how did I deal with this little problem in verse 11 or whatever the case may be? And I can just look at my sermons, and it's all just right there. I can search under topics. When I do a topic search now, if I do a topic search for walk or fruit or growing or knowledge, in that topic search, it's not only going to find that topic in Baker's Encyclopedia, but it's also going to find any sermons that I've preached that was the topic for. Kind of cool. Now, again, this is something that you purchase to add on to Libronics, but as you are starting out, one of the difficulties sometimes is a way to organize yourself and keep track of all the sermons you've preached and where you preached them and when the last time you preached it was and all of that kind of stuff. Now you can simply set up a spreadsheet or some form of a database to do that for you if you'd like. But Logos is providing a way for you to do that right within the software and make it searchable so that when you're looking at various parts of the New Testament, you can see what sermons have been preached and when the last time you talked about this particular aspect was. So that, Larry, is really why it does become valuable to include it in your Libronics rather than just a Word document.
What's it called? Like if you're going to purchase it?
It's called the Sermon File Add-in. Now, again, if you guys are going to buy anything through Logos website, this isn't part of our little website at Logos, but don't just go to their website and purchase it. Call Logos on the phone. Say, I am part of the Bear Valley academic program. I need to talk to somebody in academic sales. And actually, our guy's name is Tim Sebens, S-E-B-E-N-S. Tell him you're part of the Bear Valley program, and you would like to know if there's an academic discount on the sermon file add-in. And there will be some discount. Now, for most books that they publish, it's a 50% discount. I think for the sermon file add-in, it was 50%. So it makes it like a $25 add-in instead of $50. So that's kind of a good deal. Not kind of a good deal. It is good. But neat little add-in. Okay, enough of the shameless promotion for things that you don't have. The next one I want to look at is verse list. Go ahead and open a verse list. Go File, New, and under New Document, select Verse List, and say, don't worry about naming it at this point, just open it. When you're studying through various things, there's times when you just need to keep track of where you found a particular Greek word, or you're compiling a list of verses for various things. For further study and so on. This is a place where you can do that. Now, notice if you click on Add, you've got some choices. And some of these choices are pretty cool. You can add verses or verse. You can add verses from a web page. You can add verses from a file. You can add verses from a clipboard. Or you can add verses from the active Word document. Now, for right now, just click Verse. Add from Verses. And type in Acts 2:38. And you've got a verse. Pretty powerful tool, huh? You can record that verse right here on a verse list, and isn't that nifty? Yeah, I know. I'm telling you, this program is just awesome. Now, under Style, you'll notice you have some choices. References only is what is selected. Select references and text in one column. Aha. Now we're getting a little bit better. Select references and text in two columns. Now it just puts your reference off in the left-hand column. The cool one is references and text in three columns. Now the reason this is cool is because you can choose how it appears in these two columns. So if you go under your properties for this window, looks like a little file folder, you'll notice that you've got a name for the properties, for the file, and then you can choose your primary version and your secondary version. I've just chosen the Nestle Alan, or Nestle Alan, 27th edition Greek text. You can choose any two versions.
I can't get my two columns.
What do you mean you can't get it?
I'm clicking on it.
It only puts the verse and the words.
So
it doing it? Here's all it'll look like. Let me go back real quick. 2 columns. Boom. You got your reference in one column, you got the text in another column. So, you decide to study the word for deacon. And you're compiling a list of verses where it appears. You could store that list of verses in a verse list for further study without having to redo those searches. Now, I'm going to show you that as we get into searches, a lot of the search result boxes up in the upper right-hand corner, what do we find in Windows sometimes in the upper right-hand corner? Other tools, right? There's going to be a list of things that you can do with those search results. One of them is export to a verse list. So you've just done a search for all of the words for elder. Poimen, presbyteros, episkopos. You've done all of those. Well, you can save those to a verse list and have easy access to them. It's pretty much all it does, but it does do that. Now, one of the things that I think is cool is when you click add from web page. Now, again, you guys don't have an internet access right now, but I'm just going to type in the Bear Valley website, bearvalleycfc.org, and say OK. These are all of the verses that appear on the home page of the Bear Valley website. Automatically dumps them in, because I told it to. And I can go back to looking at it just in reference only, and you can see it found six verses or pericopes on the Bear Valley webpage that it could do that from. Have you ever been reading something online from a Brotherhood journal or something, and they cite 15, 16 different sources during the article? Well, you can just add those verses to a verse list, show it in 2 columns or 3 columns, depending on what you want. And that way, as you read along with their article, you've actually got the text of what they're talking about right there. So that can become powerful, especially if you want to go back. Especially if you're reading longer theses or treatises on the web. A lot of times you may be reading a denominational guy's view on something. And he has cited a lot of scripture, and you want to study so that you can refute it online or send him an email and talk to him about some things. Well, dump all of his verses into a verse list so that you can make sure that you're quoting him correctly, that you're understanding what he's saying, the text is saying, and you also have that list of verses so that you can form some form of refutation. Kind of neat. Yes?
I just may be slow, I don't know, but, so you can go in and then title this, to say that you wanted to get a lot of verses on baptism, you can title it baptism, so that way next time you want to go in, you've got baptism.
Right. Yep. So let me show you how this works real quick. I'm going to actually close this. I think I should have, I have a number of verse lists saved. And what I've done is, for various things, I have my Worthy Walk one. Another one that I did was looking for passages. We were studying through ego eimi, which is a phrase in John, I am, where Jesus says, I am. Well, I started looking for those occurrences of those words, and as I found them, I don't want to lose them again. I mean, I've worked hard to find them all. So I just created a verse list. I'm just going to open it, with all the occurrences of ego eimi. Hello. And there they are. Matthew 22, I am the God. Matthew 24, I am the Christ. Luke 1:19, I am Gabriel. See, I was finding every occurrence of ego eimi in some form or another. Well, they're all right here. Now that was a lot of work to find those. I don't want to lose them. I wanted to study them. So I've got them all in a verse list. If there's one here that I don't want, I can select it and I can just delete it. I can right-click on it and delete it from the list. And so slowly as I whittle down my list to what I was really looking for, I've got it. And I don't have to reconstruct all those searches to find it. I've just got it in a verse list. I did a personal study on deacons. I don't know how many of you realize that the word for deacon, diakonos, appears some 27 times in the New Testament. How many times is it translated by the word deacon? Out of 27 occurrences of the word diakonos, it's translated deacon 3 times. That becomes interesting information when you start to define what a deacon is. Well, how is it translated every other time? Well, minister or servant. Most commonly, servant. So, anyway, I've got a verse list. It takes it a second to open up because my computer is acting slow. But there are all the occurrences of the word deacon. Now, I could do this by researching my text for diakonos, and I could redo that search every time. But why go through that hassle? I mean, if this is going to be an extended study, I don't want to have to redo the search every time. So I can just store it in a verse list, and then when I want to study deacons, I'm going to come back to this verse list, and I'm going to explore these individual texts maybe a little bit more specifically.
So how do we, say we want to do deacon, we can't, how do we, is there a place we put that, or is that where we have to actually manually put them in there, or? You have to actually do the search. I'm going to actually show you how to do this one. Let's find the first occurrence of the word that we're looking for. In this case, the first place it shows up is Luke 22:27. It's this last phrase, but I am among you as the one who serves. Well, that word serves is the root diakonos, okay? So that's the verb form of the word. Let's see. Let's find, let's go to... Well, I'm wondering, I'm opening up a new one. How do I even get them on there?
Well, you would have to type them individually if you're going to just open a new one, but there's a faster way. And I'll show you how I created this one. Look at John 2, verse 9. It has the word servants, but the servants who had drawn the water knew, okay? So I'm going to close this for a second, and I'm going to show Perry how to do what he wants. Go open your Bible to John 2, verse 9. And right-click on the word servants. And run an Englishman's concordance on the word servants. Basically, what did it find? What does Englishman's do? Every occurrence of the Greek word. Notice I'm looking at English, but it's giving me the occurrence of the Greek word. So, look at this list. 29 occurrences. I was wrong. I thought it was 27. 29 occurrences, and this is how it's translated each time. All right? Now, I could copy and paste all of this into a verse list. That might work. There's no other tools on this one. I didn't want to get into the search lists real quick, but I'm going to do one real fast. I'm just going to do a Bible search real quick. We're going to get to this, but I'm going to just type the word servant. And I'm going to look in the New Testament for the word servant. And I'm going to do a search. I'm searching my New American Standard. Now, it has found 80 occurrences. I'm doing this quickly just to show you how it works. I already know that not all of these are the word diakonos, but that's not my point. Notice that after I do the search up here in Other Tools, I have Export Results to Search to Verse List. When I click on it, it automatically creates a new verse list with all of those references. I can now save this list as servant, and I didn't have to type all of those in. Do you see that, Perry? Now,
I'm hitting export results to verse list.
yep, and it'll open a new verse list with all of those references in it. And if I change this now to references and text in 2 columns, it's going to add the text to all of this. Now there's 80 passages, so there's a lot to chew through. I may want to chew through this a bit at a time, and I don't have time today. So that rather than recreate the search, I'm just going to save this verse list and I can open it later. But I didn't have to type all that in. Now, I wouldn't typically have done diakonos this way. I would have done a Greek search. I still would have exported it to a verse list, but I didn't want to get into the Greek searching right now. We're going to do that later. But you can see when you do a search, a Bible search, up in Other Tools, you'll have Export Results to Verse List, and you can just dump it into a verse list, save it for later. Now, how do I save it? There's no save command up in the file menu like there is in most programs. When you try to close this verse list, it's going to pop open a window that's going to give you 3 choices. Name the document, leave the document unnamed, or delete the document. Delete the unnamed document. I'm going to call this servant, and I'm going to call it NASB, just so that I know that I searched for servant in the New American Standard. And I'm going to say OK, and it just saved that document for me. So if I now go under File, Open, if I go to Verse List, I scroll down, I've got Servant NASB. When I click on it and click Open, it's going to open that same file. Make sense? So what at first appears to be not really useful is actually a pretty useful tool. Now, I wouldn't sit here and just manually type in verses. I don't think that's particularly efficient. But when you're doing particular searches, or if you're accumulating verses that you're finding from various searches, just typing them in one at a time may work very well. Notice that you can do add from web page, add from file. If you have a Microsoft Word document, for example, I'm going to close this for a second because it'll be too many verses. This is kind of neat. Close already. All right. File, new. Verse list. I'm just going to open a new verse list. And I'm going to select Add from File. Now, I'm going to browse on my computer to, let's see, what it's going to give me. That figures. Network. Share folders. I'm going to go to one of my sermon files. Sermons and Bible classes. My sermon on singing. Fruit. I want to show all files. On singing. I'm going to select my Word document for singing. Right there. And say Open. Say OK. Now this may take a second, but what it's going to do is in the background, it's going to search that Word document, which isn't open, for any Bible references. And when it finds them, it's going to add them to this verse list. Sometime. sometime soon, hopefully.
How do you know it's working?
Well, that's a good question. I don't. And part of the reason is because I'm actually using a Macintosh computer and I'm running Windows on a Mac. So the file that I just asked it to find is actually on another operating system within this machine. So this may not work. But if you had the file resident on your machine, it probably wouldn't take as long, and it would certainly work.
Tried mine a couple of times already. Haven't gotten it to work yet.
You haven't gotten it to work at all?
I can do it if the document's open.
Yeah, I knew it would do it from an active document. That's interesting. I'll do some research on that and find out why. I haven't messed with this in a long time. My typical from here is to do it from searches. When I do a search, I want to save it to a verse list. From a web page, which I already demonstrated works. And then from an active Word document. If I actually have the Word document open, let me minimize for just a second. Let me open Microsoft Word.
Maybe from a file it has to be a text.
It might need to be a text file. Now I want to go ahead and open I'm just going to find a Word document to open. I'm going to go back and try to do that same file that I did before. Sermons and Bible classes. My singing sermon, singing from the heart. Okay, there's my lesson. While it's open, if I switch back to Libronics and say add from active Word document, it found it. Okay? So I'm not sure why it's not working from file, but I'll explore that and see if I can figure it out. Again, most of the time I'm working from an active file. The other one I have not tested recently, it used to be able to pull them out of PDF files. So if you've downloaded a PDF from the internet that has a number of resources on it, you can say add from file and it would work, but I haven't tried it in a while. So, but you start to see how verse list is basically a place to store passages for further study. It's really all it is. All right. Now we get to do the fun one. How many of you are taking Greek class? How many of you are using index cards for your vocabulary in Greek class? Everybody taking Greek class, raise your hand. You should be using index cards for your Greek vocabulary, okay? That is very helpful. Go under File, New, and do Vocabulary List. I'm going to actually show you how to use this for something it was not intended for. But what this was designed to do was to help you learn vocabulary. When you open it, after a second or two, a Properties window will open. And notice, mine says Language Greek. You want Greek for your language. And say OK. Now, under Add, when you click on Add, select Add Bible Passage. Under Bible, select a Greek text. I've just got mine selected to the NA27. You can use the UBS 4 if you prefer, but use one of those two. Get in the habit of NA27 or UBS 4. They're basically the same Greek text. By the way, the NA27 and the UBS 4 is the same Greek text. Different publishers, different morphologies, but the same manuscript form. And type in John 1. So I want all of the Greek words in John chapter 1. And click on OK. That'll take a second. If your computer is slower, it may take more than a second. What it has just done is it has just mapped all of the Greek words in lemma form in John chapter 1. You'll also notice that there's a new menu item at the top of this list called print cards. You can actually print flashcards from this menu of these Greek words. Now, if that were all it was, that would be pretty cool. And that was really all it was intended to do. You'll notice that you have two lines. You have the Greek word. You have, in parentheses, the number of times that word occurs. And then you have an English gloss, or glossary item, or definition, basically. And when you go to print cards, it'll let you print 8 cards at a time and turn it over and do all kinds of cool stuff. But I want you to right-click on the title, John 1. And select the second item, sort by frequency descending. What you just did is found all of the frequently occurring words in John chapter 1. Now, that's kind of cool. It becomes very cool when you realize that you can type in anything. You can map the entire New Testament. You can map individual Gospels. You can map anything that you want. And I have actually, last time I did this, the students went through, we mapped every New Testament book. We mapped every Old Testament book. And now you have frequency lists for every writing of the New Testament. Now, why does that help you? Well, let's do this. Close this for a second. Just say delete the list delete the unnamed document. And let's start a new one. Go File, New, Vocabulary List, say OK. It'll open. Leave the default language as Greek, say OK. Under Add Bible Passage. Leave the Bible at the Greek text that you did before, and just type in the word James. And say OK. Now, like I said, because of the Polycom system and a couple of other things, my computer seems to be running a little slower. When I'm not all hooked up to this, it can map the books in James in about 15 or 20 seconds. Some of you may already be done. Did yours run that fast?
Freezing.
Okay. It's quick.
After we get into the vocabulary list, what do we select?
Right-click on the name James at the top of the list and do sort by frequency descending.
I don't have James yet.
Okay, I'm not there yet either. Okay, I got mine. Right-click on where it says James, sort by frequency descending. That'll take a second. Now, if you eliminate words at the top of the list like the and you and in and on and at and that kind of stuff, when you get about 7 or 8 words down the list, I want you to tell me, JR, what are some key words in the book of James? Mike?
Boss, brother, God, you have faith, work.
All of those are indeed key words in the Epistle of James. exactly by the number of times they occur. Brother occurs 19 times. God occurs 16 times. Faith occurs 16 times. You skip words like for and to and into. Work occurs 15 times. Where do we have the passage that says faith without works is dead and has a whole treatise on the idea of faith and works? James chapter 2. Do you see how just by looking at the vocabulary of a Bible book, you can start to uncover what the key words in that book are? Yeah, Terry?
Well, I was just wondering that. Mine has I exist, I am.
Uh-huh.
That's probably in conjunction with another verb, I'm guessing.
That's what ame is it's just the verb I am, or I
Is
exist.
it the same I am that Jesus refers himself to, or no?
Yes. However, the significance of when Jesus says it is he adds a word to it. Ego eimi. And it's I am I, basically, is what he's saying. I am I. I am exists. We use it all the time. It's a common verb. So I wouldn't look at that too often as a key word in a passage. Now, ego eimi would be a different kind of. Do you see how quickly we just discovered keywords in a book? Now, I'm not going to do it on mine because mine's acting slow right now. But there's a cool little thing that they don't tell you. First of all, go ahead and start to close this window. And when you close it, it's going to ask you to name this document. I want you to name the document Greek. Just type GRK or something. And then a dash, and then James. Now, the reason I'm going to have you do that is because later on you might start be mapping Hebrew words, and it's just easier to get into a good naming convention. I'm going to go ahead and delete mine because I have 15 copies of James because I use it as an example all the time. But once you save it, go up under Open, File Open, and you don't ever have to run that report again. All you have to do is go to your vocabulary list, scroll down to where the Greek James list is, and hit OK, and it opens a lot faster than it creates one. So if you're looking for keywords or if you're looking for frequency numbers and that kind of stuff, you can just open these vocabulary lists. You can run them, and at night instead of watching American Idol or something, you can sit there and run vocabulary lists on New Testament. But here's what's really cool. And this is a word study geek talking. I'm not a Greek scholar, but I like word studies. I'm going to show you one that I'm going to do File Open. And I'm going to scroll down. Oh, don't tell me I deleted it. I bet I did. When I changed computers, I deleted some. I didn't copy them over. Well, they're not there. You can actually map multiple books at the same time. Would you be curious as to what words Paul used most frequently in all of his epistles? Now, think about that from a paper book standpoint. How are you going to find that out?
Memory.
Let me give you a clue. You're not. But you could actually type in each Bible book name and separate it by a semicolon. And when you hit enter, it's going to give you a vocabulary list for that range of books. Now, if the books are concurrent, which just means one right after the other, you can use a dash. So if you wanted to do Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, you could do Matthew-John, and it's going to map all of those, okay? But start to think about it. You want to map all of the frequently occurring words in the pastorals. Or you want to map all the frequently occurring words in the University Catholic epistles. You can do that right here, and once you do it, you can save it for later and work from it all you want. Kind of neat, huh? I can, but like I said, my computer's running kind of slow tonight for some reason. Today. I'll do File New. I'm not going to actually execute the search, but I'll show it to you. So start a new one. Make sure your language is Greek.
Some vocabulary lists.
On vocabulary lists. Now, under add Bible passage. And I could just type, for example, Romans, semicolon. First, I'm just going to randomly pick 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians.
And we could go Romans - Hebrews if we wanted.
Exactly. Or you could do...
If you put Hebrews, will it get all of Hebrews, or maybe 4 Hebrews?
Why would it be 4 Hebrews?
In between. So does that mean
He's asking.
beginning of Romans and the end of Hebrews?
It's gonna map the entire book. Yeah, it's gonna, when you put the book name, it's gonna get all the Greek words in that book. An easy one to think of is John. Okay, so if I wanted to do all of John's writing, and this one would actually be a little faster, I could do the Gospel of John. I could do 1 John - 3 John, semicolon, Revelation. And I could hit go, okay, and it's going to map all of John's writing that quick. Now, truthfully, wonder why. Might have maxed out your memory. Did that happen to other people too? Did it happen to you too, man? Yeah, it'll do big chunks. Now, I do know that I don't know of any student that has successfully mapped the entire New Testament. It usually errors out somewhere around 10 or 12 hours later, saying, I don't know what to do anymore, there's just too many words. No. But it is a new opportunity to buy a new computer once you ruin yours. No, but do you see the power of this? Denny's going to talk in exegesis about the importance of keywords. Keywords based on word frequency can be very important. And so while a frequently occurring word does not automatically mean a keyword, I'm not aware of any frequently occurring words that do not end up being keywords. For example, words like work or faith or that kind of stuff. I'm not talking about in and an and the and that kind of stuff. Now, what word frequency doesn't show you is a word that does not occur frequently but is still a significant keyword. And, you're going to have to look for those through other ways. But this is really powerful. For example, in the Gospel of John, I'm just going to shorten mine to actually, I'm going to just go open rather than run it. Since, again, I'm a little sluggish today. Why do I keep saying tonight? I'm going to go to the Gospel of John. Now, I wish Denny were here because this is kind of my opportunity to give him a hard time. Denny is a word counter, and he's very good at it. And he has spent hundreds of hours counting words within texts to find commonly occurring Greek words. In the Gospel of John, I'm going to sort mine by word frequency. And if I scroll down, you'll notice that the word Jesus, the name Jesus, appears in the Gospel of John 244 times. Now, how would you like to take your Greek text and start at John chapter 1, verse 1, and find every occurrence of the word Jesus and count them accurately. And then realize that when somebody gets a computer that you missed 2 of them. Because Denny in his Greek text in pencil has the word Jesus and he has 242. Well, guess what? There's 244. And so he missed 2. And we actually ran a report to show them all so that he could find the 2 he missed, because it was driving him crazy. But he spent literally weeks counting, and you go back 5-6 years, that was your only choice. I mean, it's not like Denny was just lame doing this. It was the only way you could do those kinds of studies. Now, you could pull out a concordance, you could find the Jesus, and you could try to count the number of times they found it just in John, for example. But what's the problem? If you're working from a regular concordance, what's it based on? The English word. Now, for Jesus, that's pretty consistent. That's not going to be a problem. But you're looking at other words, agapao versus phileo, that's going to be a lot harder for you to count from a concordance. Whereas right here, I can find, and I can tell you now, agapao appears 143 times in the New Testament. Phileo appears, I think it's like 22. So all of that kind of study you can do right here from these vocabulary lists, and you can save them, and you can have lots of fun finding keywords in Bible books, which is an important part of your study. So, very neat. Now, there's one last little thing that I want to show you about vocabulary lessons. And I want all of the freshmen right now to hand me $5 for this little tip. On the Logos website, you need to give me $10. On the Logos website, there is a place where people have created vocabulary lists for the major Greek grammars that are available on the market. Now, what is a Greek grammar? A book. Funny, in Greek 1, are you using a Greek grammar?
Yes.
Which one are you using? Machen's Greek grammar. I wonder if that one occurs. Do you see New Testament Greek for Beginners right here? J.G. Machen?
We have to be on the internet for this?
You have to get it off the internet, yes. Here are the vocabulary lessons for Lesson 3, Lesson 4, Lesson 5, and you have a cool little thing up here called print flashcards. You can actually print your Greek flashcards from here. Everybody give me $5. Yeah, I know. And how many hours did it take? Now,
Will said to write them. Yeah. He said so really.
that was going to be honestly, that was going to be my very next comment. You will learn extra if you take the time to write them. There is something about putting paper to pencil and writing that puts it in your head better than just having pre-printed cards.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Now, there's also a bug in the printing of these cards, and that is that you can only do 10 at a time. You're supposed to be able to do all of them, but it doesn't work correctly. It puts a blank piece of paper in between each page. There's something about the page setup that's goofy, and it doesn't work. So you can only do like 8 or 10 at a time and have it actually work. So, with that being said, you can download this file. I put a link on the Ministry Text website, the class website. There's a link to these vocabulary lists on the Logos website, and you can download it from there. Yes, Roger.
The process to get to that
Well, you would have to actually go download this vocabulary list to do this. You don't have this file on your machine. You have to go download the vocabulary list from the Logos website and then just open it in this vocabulary list section. But pretty cool stuff, okay? Yeah, it's all free. I'm not going to cover add word list and add section to the vocabulary list. We'll deal with those later, but you get the major gist of the vocabulary. Now, Denny complains that the vocabulary list, as far as finding keywords and having to right-click on the name of the book and resort it by word frequency, is difficult. And I'll agree that it's not the most intuitive thing in the world. However, this list wasn't intended to give you keywords. It was intended for you to create index cards to do vocabulary lists. This is just kind of one of those happy accidents of what they did, and everybody started using it to create these lists of keywords that could then be studied individually. So, powerful stuff. Really neat. Okay? Any questions about vocab lists or verse lists or any of the other things we found in the file menu so far? Understand that new and open, or you get the same list of stuff. In new, you create the files, you save them when you close them, you open them with the open list. Yeah?
I was going to say, how is it that you rearrange like if you want the word that is used the most up on the top of the list?
You right-click on the name of the book and say sort by frequency descending. And that's going to put the most frequently occurring words at the top and the least occurring words at the bottom. Now, you can resort it alphabetically, and there's times when you're looking for a particular word in a particular Bible book, and it's easier to find it alphabetically in the Greek list rather than by the number of occurrences. So just resort the list alphabetically, scan down till you find your Greek word, and you'll find out how many times it occurs. There are other ways to get that occurrence. How else do you find out how many times a word occurs? Where else do we see that information? Englishman's. Close. Wrong. Exegetical guide. Okay, the exegetical guide gives you the density graph, remember? And that shows you the number of occurrences. So, all right. We are going to stop there for today. The bell's going to ring in a couple of minutes, and we should be good to go. Have a good weekend. You should be doing your reading on ministry on the Wired book, so check your dates on when things are due through the website, and make sure that you're staying up to date on your reading.